All right, guys. We're going to get to the tie-in here very quickly. I just want to quickly announce the winner of the March Madness tying competition. It was a great competition. We had a lot of fun doing it again this year. We learned a lot this year, and I can tell you this: we've already started talking about some changes and some things that we can do to make it better for next year. Um, we've been waiting to declare the winner, which we're going to do here shortly, and then we can start to distribute all of the prizes and so forth that we have. We're still tallying up some of the numbers, and we'll get to that here in the next, I don't know, couple of weeks or so. It's a big job to go through all this stuff and see who got the most likes and all that. I know that both of the Jock and Terry, both of the finalists, you're going to get a full rod and reel setup, compliments of our friends at TFO. There is a Sims dry creek sling pack that is going to go to the winner. We've got a gift certificate from Catch Cam for $100 for one of their nets that has the GoPro mount on it, which is pretty cool. We have tons and tons of fly tying packs from Semperfly. Semperfly hooked us up. They really hooked us up. Fair Flies, we have some of their 5D brushes and some stuff from Nature Spirit as well. So to all of the sponsors, thank you very much. You guys really made this a worthwhile competition. The winner is also going to get a $550 Nor-vise gift certificate. So my guess is somebody's going to get a new colored vise, and that's kind of the way that we that we worked it out. So we cut the voting off at 7:00 last night. We have all of the votes. I've got them all written down. They were coming in various different. I was getting them emailed to me. They were coming through the Norvise site. Text Casey was getting some of them. I was getting them on my personal messenger. So it took a little while to make sure that we had all of the votes. We went back through and double and triple counted them several times. And okay, so Tyler is texting me right now. All right, I can deal with that later. So all week it was back and forth, and Terry was winning and Jock was winning, and Terry was winning and Jock was winning, and it kept going back and forth. I will tell you this: we had 50 of the 64 people that were in the contest voted. So 50 of the 64 voted. We put it out several times for the people to, please get your votes in, and we did that throughout the week. And then it got to the point to where we had to cut it off. So we cut it off last night at 7:00. The last 4 votes came in pretty close to the time when we cut it off, and the winner won by 2 votes. It was 23-27, and the 2021 Nor-vise March Madness fly tying competition champion is Terry Landry. I can't see the comments, so hopefully people are going crazy right now. But I was happy. I was happy with the competition. I told Brittany right before we went live, as happy as I am that Terry won, now I'm kind of mad because it is going to cost me a fortune to get that fly that he tied on the logo for next year's contest. But yeah, good show, guys. Good show, and we appreciate your support. We appreciate all the comments and you guys participating in this, and we're going to do it again. We're going to do it next year. We're going to do it better. So thank you, and that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to hop off here, and I'm going to let Britt do her thing. So thank you guys, and Britt, take it away.
Thanks. I get off my phone. I was congratulating
All right,
Terry.
hold on now.
All right. Let me get in here. Okay. All right. So let's get started. So congratulations, Terry. Also the job you guys did, both did amazing, and to all of the other participants. It was a good competition. There were some great flies put out this year. And of course, thank you to all of the sponsors for it. Hopefully everybody had some fun doing it and it pushed you out of your comfort zone a little bit. I know it did me. So with that, tonight I'm going to be tying a few panfish flies. So right now in Idaho, I live in Lewiston, which is central Idaho. We're about to start our runoff season where the rivers are, you can find some fish, but they're just, they're pretty dangerous to be wading in. So we like to hit the local lakes that are a little bit lower in elevation. The ones higher up are still frozen over, but the lower ones start opening up, and it's a great time to fish for panfish. When I started fishing, fly fishing, I kind of jumped right past all of the panfish and went straight to trout. So I missed that gateway drug that most people get. So now I've kind of gone back and have the last couple of years been hitting the local lakes and reservoirs a bit more for panfish, and I'm loving every minute of it. I will be, I think Wednesday, Tim said, I have a blog post coming out on the Nor-vise page that talks a little bit about pan fishing early season. So be sure to keep your eye out for that. And these flies are a couple of my favorites that I like to use in our local reservoirs and lakes. So with that, let's get started. Our first fly is going to be a copper john variation. Let me switch my camera, which I'll have to refocus, I'm sure, because I knocked it out of the way earlier in a sheer panic when nothing was working. Yes, I am in Lewiston. Someone asked if I was in Lewiston. Let me just get this repositioned a little bit. Facebook was just not cooperating earlier, and I pushed everything out of the way, and now everything's probably out of focus again. There we go. Okay, so this fly, it's just a copper john variation that I like to use for our local panfish. So today I am using this one. I'm using fluorescent green or chartreuse Semperfli Classic Wax 8-aught. Before we do that, so I've got a hook in the vise. I'm using a Daiichi 1550 size 12, which is just a standard wet fly. I've got an appropriately sized bead on there. And if I can find it, there we go. So just gonna put 5 or 6 wraps of wire on there. And that's more or less just to hold the bead in place. The bead will get it down, but just kind of helps hold that bead in and builds up our thorax a little bit. So we'll start. I've already pinched the barb on my hook. Oh, yeah, I already did that. And tonight, as far as jaws go, I'm using the fine point jaws, and I have them in the new hubs that come with the shank jaws. So it allows it to spin a lot smoother, since that is now spinning on center. So I've been playing around with that a little bit, and I'm really enjoying them. I'm gonna go ahead and just stretch that hook shank. For the tail on a regular copper john, a lot of times you'll see biots being used, but for this instead, we're going to be using just some green fluorescent chartreuse silly legs. So any rubber legs work just fine. I missed you guys too yesterday, Colin. I hope everything went good on the Zoom yesterday, and thank you to Ben, and then sounds like Terry got stuck hosting it as well. So thank you guys for picking up my slack yesterday. I just wasn't able to make it. So I cut one silly leg in 2. And then I'll take this one and cut it in 2 again. I'll use the other one for another fly. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie these in just like we would a biot on a copper john, only instead of the biot, we're using silly legs. They just give a lot of movement to the fly. The panfish really enjoy the copper john pattern. They really like the chartreuse color, it seems like. I mean, let's be honest, most of them aren't terribly picky as it is. which is part of why they're so fun to catch. Okay. So with this, we're going to be wrapping wire for the body. So you want to try to keep this underbody as even as you can and as lump-free as you can. So rather than just cutting those off right there, I'm just going to start wrapping them up until they meet that wire so that we have a smoother transition. As far as the length of these, it's up to you. I usually take them back to using the fine point jaws right about where that edge is. Got that. Next up, we're going to be tying in our wire. So for this, I am using Semperfly wire in chartreuse. It's the point, focus 0.2 millimeter. Yeah. So just a reminder from Norvise, please remember to hit the heart or thumbs up or one of those icons down at the bottom to help us get past some of those algorithms they're putting out there. So we're going to tie that in on the near side of the hook. Just going to use that right now to clip that down. Trying to keep up on the comments while I'm there, but it's hard to pay attention and look at the comments at the same time. So once we're done, I'll go back through if there's any questions I missed or anything like that. I'll go back through and answer them. All right, so I'm just going to right now, like I said, we want to have a nice smooth underbody to wrap that wire. If you spin your thread counterclockwise, it flattens it out and it helps you make that nice smooth underbody. Get them back by that tail. Okay. I'll just take my thread back up to the front. I'm going to put a half hitch in just to save our work, and then I'll take my bobbin over to my thread post. Okay, so I'm going to just take my hair clip off, and now we are going to wrap the wire. So for this, I like to tighten my tension nut down so it's not free spinning. It just gives me a little bit more control, I feel. And I'm just going to take touching wraps as I go. And if they're not quite touching, you can use your thumbnail to kind of push them together if you have to. And this is where that smooth underbody comes into play. If it's not smooth, you're going to get just all sorts of wonky looking things. Would the fish care? No, they really wouldn't. So if you're just tying them to fish, then it's the fish that do decide. But we all like to put out nice quality work, so try to get it as smooth as you can. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap that wire in. I'm just gonna helicopter that off. And a few more wraps there just to make sure she's in good and tight. And then we're also building our thorax up at the same time. So oops, sorry. There we go. All right, so next up, we are going to be tying the wing case in, which is just some black Swiss straw. So I've cut a piece off and I've actually then tore it in half because it's so big. And then we're also going to use a piece of pearl, just pearl mylar. You can also use Flashabou if you have it, whichever you have handy. So this is going to be our wing case. I'm just going to tie the pearl Flashabou in first because we'll want that to come out on top. And we will just tie in that Swiss straw right over top of it. And go ahead and use our hair clip just to hold those down. Two wraps in. Now for the thorax, you can use all sorts of materials. I've started using the Semperfly straggle string. So you can use any color you want. This is it's just black, but it's got some UV flecks in it. So I really like how it looks. Hey, Steve from Delaware. We're just going to tie that in right behind that bead. Some good wraps on it. And if you'll notice, I didn't even take it off the spool. I'm just tying it in right off the spool. That's one of the nice things with this rotary Nor-vise. You can tie a lot of stuff in just right on the spool, and then you're not going through near as much waste. So as Brian and I are doing, whoa, and there it goes. It just completely let go. Let me redo that. As we're tying more and more production, tying a little bit here or there, I am starting to understand the importance of every little bit counts. And so you don't want to waste near as much. So once you've got that tied in, go ahead and just take some touching wraps, fill that in. And just tie her off. And you can go ahead and snip that off. And by doing it that way, I had absolutely zero waste for materials on that. The only thing left now is to pull that wing case forward. So I'm going to pull that Swiss straw up and take 2 wraps over that. And then pull that mylar over top of that. A couple more wraps. Make sure they're seated good. And then go ahead and trim that off. So at that point, I'm just going to go in here and make just a little bit of a hot spot collar with the chartreuse thread. And then I'll just put a few turn whip finish on it. We're actually going to be, as I hit the camera, we're going to be putting some UV resin on the top for the wing case. So just a couple whip finishes is fine. That leg out from behind. And so for the wing case, I'm just using some Solares Flex. That out. I'm just going to put a spot of that right on top of that wing case. Kind of going up towards the bead. And then we will just hit that with the UV light. Hopefully we're not blinding everybody. And there you have it. It's just a real quick copper john variation. You could tie them in any colors you'd like. The panfish around here seem to really enjoy chartreuse. So, and I just noticed now that I put the hook in the vise without pinching the barb, so I'm going to do that now. Typically, I do that before I ever even put it in the vise, but in all of the chaos of Zoom and Facebook not working, I did not do that. So our next fly pattern is going to be a carry special. So this is another subsurface fly. We're going to be using a Daiichi 1720. I'm tying it in a size 8, which is really probably pretty large for panfish, but it also works on our trout and bass. So you can tie this much smaller if you wanted to, which would probably be better for the panfish, but we'll start here. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and just pinch that barb down. Go ahead and put it in our jaws. Now we want that shank to spin on center as much as possible, which with these fine point jaws sometimes takes me a minute or two, but seems like I can get it on center a lot easier now with the center hub than before. So really, really liking that so far. If you haven't tried the new shank jaws, they're amazing as well, but I'm really excited about the fine point jaws in the new hub. Sorry, I'm trying to see comments. I'm not doing a very good job keeping up that. Anyways, so for this, it is going to be weighted. So we're going to use some 0.015 wire. As far as thread goes, Going to be using Semperfli Classic Wax A-Dot in red. So I'm gonna get that going. Okay, so for the wire, again, I'm gonna leave it right on the spool. I am just going to put that wire in the eye of the hook. Take that first wrap, then I'm just gonna let my Norvise do the work. So you can put as many wraps as you'd like. Bust that off with your thumbnail. Then I like to just bust that front piece off. Then I can just take my thumbnail and squish the front and the back together. So easy, and then again, you're able to do it right off the spool, so you don't have a bunch of waste. And so tonight, instead of doing a giveaway for so many shares, we are going to do a trivia question about the fly I'm tying right now. And so I'll ask the question, and then the first person to answer with the correct response will be tonight's prize packet winner, which I think is still just the neck gaiter and stripping guards, I think. Should have clarified that with Tim, but I didn't. Pretty sure that's what it is. So anyways, I've now laid down a nice base of material, thread base. For the tail on this, I'm using a pheasant rump, and it is, I believe, dyed olive. You can use whatever color you like though. So I'm just going to strip some of those fibers off. And so we're just going to use some of these fibers. So I'm going to go ahead and just pinch them and then pull the stem away. By doing that, you keep those tips somewhat aligned. So go in, tie the tail in. And for this, you can tie those butt sections in, you can trim them off. It's not too big of a deal either way. I'm going to trim them off just so it's a little bit tidier. As for the rib, you can use whatever material you like. This is a very versatile pattern. That's one of the nice things about it, is you can do a lot with it. I am going to just be using the Semperfli chartreuse wire again that I used on the other fly, because that's what I have handy. Now, before I tie that in, the trivia question for tonight is going to be, what Canadian province did the Carey Special originate in? First person to answer it correctly will be the winner of tonight's prize pack. I know there's some lag as far as when responses come in, so throw your answers out there, and after the show's over, Tim or Casey will go through and look to see who's coming first. Then we don't see them all at the right time. I'm just going to tie that wire in. I see some responses coming in already. But take a minute here in a second and look to see what we've got. And now I've lost my hair clip because that's just what happens. So it was right where it was supposed to be. Okay. So I have seen the answer come in a few times now. So from the research I was able to do, it originated in British Columbia in the lakes up there in the Kamloops area. So there's a number of correct answers out there on there. So Tim and Casey will take a look at that later and determine who responded with the correct answer first. The body on this fly is going to be just peacock herl. So we're going to take 5 or 6 pieces. And I'm just going to trim those tips off so that they're nice and even, and it also gets those frail tips off. And now this is, of course, this is my favorite part of the Nor-vise. If anybody knows me, they know that. So I'm going to just tie this peacock curl in, and then I'm going to make a rope out of it. I'm going to go ahead and put a dubbing or a half hitch in. And then I'm going to take my thread over here. I'm going to take the peacock curl over here. If you can see that, you can put it on the thread post, or I like to just use my finger. And then I'm going to loosen the tension nut on my vise. I'm just going to spin it. And so now what I've done, see, a few of those pieces did break, but that's not a big deal, because all of these pieces are wound so tight on that thread that we've in essence just made a chenille out of it. So now I'm just going to make that and just take that up. This isn't going to be quite enough because it's a pretty large hook. So wrap those down. It's a little awkward trying to wrap stuff down with the camera that close. So wrap those in. Then I can go ahead and just trim those out. And we'll just take another clump of, equal, maybe a few more. So that way we get a little bit more of a taper in the body. If we do a few more. Hey, Pablo from Argentina. So again, just trim those tips out and then tie them in. Go ahead and put a half hitch in. Then we're just going to do that same thing. We're going to take it over with our thread. You don't want to hold them too tight because they will break. And then just take the vise for a little bit of a spin, make that rope out of it, and just walk it up to the front of the hook. And so by adding a few more pieces, I was able to actually put a little bit of a taper in there all by itself without having to even really try too quickly, too hard at it, excuse me. Afraid I'm going to hit the camera on you. There. Yeah. Once you have those tied in, go ahead and trim that off. A little bit closer. Just take, I like to just a couple more wraps there, make sure it's bound down nice and tight. Now we're going to just put another half hitch in and then take our thread over to our thread post. Now we're going to rib it. So I like to counter rib it. It just seems to sit kind of higher up on the peacock curl that way. And so you can see it a little bit more. We really don't need the ribbing here for durability because we have already made a chenille rope out of our peacock. A lot of times that's part of its purpose of the rib is to make that more durable. For us today, it is, I'm trying to figure out what we've got going. It is purely to add segmentation and a little bit of flash. So I just helicoptered that wire off. Like that. And now the hackle on this is going to be, again, just more of that pheasant rump. So we've got a pretty long one here. The hackles on this are usually pretty long. They usually go to at least the back of the hook, if not a little bit longer. Of course, to some degree, that's your preference. So I'm just going to strip all those fluffies off the back of it. And then just hold the very tip of it. I can see there's some broken ones, so I'm just gonna try to grab y'all now. I'm just gonna cut that tip out just to give us a nice little triangle to tie in. And when you tie it in, you want the dull side facing the hook, the shiny side facing you. And just give that a good tie down. I'm gonna throw a half hitch in. And then grab the hackle pliers real quick. I am going to take my thread over to my thread post. You don't have to, you can just do this part by hand because you're just going to take a wrap or two But honestly, with the camera right there, a wrap or two is kind of hard. So I'm just preening those fibers back. We want those to go to the rear of the hook. So I'm going to tighten my tension nut down just so I have, not all the way, but a little bit. So I just have a little bit more control as I go around. I'm going to take just a couple wraps. And then go ahead and grab that material and just secure it down. Kind of got quite the mess going right this second. Take care of that here in a minute. Go ahead and just trim out that stem. And then if you just preen all those fibers back some, and just take a couple wraps just to convince them to stay to the rear of the hook. Then we're just going to put a neat, tidy little head on that fly. A little bit big is fine. I think with the red head, it just kind of adds to it. Our fish here seem to like red, so. And then also any flies we tie with weight on them, we put a red head on them. That way we know that they're weighted. So when we're tying, there's no question, or when we're fishing, there's no question about it. Just gonna go in, do a finish on real quick, and trim our thread out. And then again, to finish it off, you can use lacquer, you can leave it as it is, you can use, I'm using Solar Bone Dry. I'm just gonna put a coat of that on, and I've heard now that they also make a black Solar Bone Dry, so I'm excited to get that for our steelhead. And just hit that with the UV light, try to block it from the camera a little bit. I don't blind everybody. And there you have it. So that's a Carry Special. It's super versatile. This is not the original materials. The original materials use a lot of woodchuck. From what research I found, if you Google the Carry Special, there's a very good article by my late friend Bill Jollymore, who talks quite a bit about it. He used to fish up in BC quite a bit. And so this was one of his go-to patterns when he was fishing Loch Lejeune, I think it was, and all of the lakes up in that area where they had a cabin. So again, Carry Special, super versatile. You can do a lot of things with it. This kind of dyed olive color is one of my favorites for our lakes. And it just could look like a lot of things. So, does anybody have questions on that? I think trying to see the comments, but I don't know that they're all coming in as quickly as I can see them. So, awesome, thank you. Okay, all right, so next up, this is one of my flies I like to fish as well. These are all panfish flies. I kind of missed out and jumped right into trout fishing, which I dearly love, but I've really started enjoying pan fishing on just our local lakes. We got a couple of Maxon inflatable pontoon type things last year, and it was just really a game changer for us to be able to get out into the lake. So this is just a simple gurgler pattern. It works great. It floats well. You can tie like the chartreuse copper john dropper off of it, and it's just killer. Our panfish love it. You can tie it smaller, but this size seems to be okay. It still gets strikes. And then being a little bit bigger, sometimes the bass will hit on it as well. So with that, we'll get started. So again, I'm using the Daiichi 1720 in size 8. Probably, I would normally tie it a little bit smaller. I just didn't have any smaller Daiichi 1720s. So size 8 it is, and for video purposes, bigger is better. Again, I'm going to just pinch the barb of the hook. Nothing is more frustrating than tying a fly and then pinching the barb of the hook and then the hook point breaking on you. And you have a really nice fly that you can do not much with. Okay, So again, we put the hook in the vise so that it spins on center as close as we can. For this, I'm going to switch back out again to the chartreuse thread. If I can find where I put it. Where did it go? Oh my goodness. Oh, there it is. Found it. It was right in front of me. Okay. So we'll go ahead and just get our thread started. So again, that's just the Semperfli Classic Wax A-Dot thread. I'm going to just lay a thread base down and get that all the way back to just where that barb would have been. Okay, so for the tail, I'm just using some green marabou. I'm gonna go ahead, it's hard to see it, but if you go ahead and just pull out that center piece and trim that out, it'll just allow there to be some more movement with that. Marabou can be a little funny to work with, it gets everywhere. So we've made these kind of neat little fly pucks, and you can use that to just kind of dampen that marabou down so it's a little bit easier to work with. Once it dries, it'll fluff right back up. Now we want the tail to be about as long as the shank. Doesn't have to be perfect, but give or take. I'm going to go ahead and just do pinch wraps on that just to hold it in. I like to take a wrap behind and then over, and another one behind, and then over again, just to really lock that in place. We don't have to worry too much about the underbody on this being smooth. A little bit, but not too much. So I'm going to go ahead and just trim those off at a bit of an angle, just so it tapers a little bit. So it's not quite as abrupt of an edge. Just find those butt sections down. We're going to add just a little bit of olive crystal flash, just to give it a little bit of pizzazz. So we'll take 2 or 3 fibers, doesn't have to be a lot. I'm going to tie them in to the near side of the hook, the side nearest to me. And then I'm going to take them and double them over to that far side. You want those to extend just a little bit behind the tail. You can trim those out. Was that just water that you put on the marabou? Yes, yep, it's just water. So it's just, you know, the fly pucks that you buy flies in from the fly shops. Well, not so much now, but so it's just one of the fly pucks you get at the fly shop, and then just a kitchen sponge with water in it. And I've also cut it in half. So that way, if I'm tying with biots, I can put them in there and set that on top and just let them soften a little bit before I use them. So just a quick tip, however, to keep in mind, if you're not going to be using it, open it so it'll dry out. Otherwise, they do tend to get a little moldy, funky. So don't ask, that's how we know. Okay, so we've got that. Next up, we're going to be using a piece of foam. And the foam I have, it's just craft foam from, I think, Joann's. So it's just 2 millimeter. I think I prefer 3 millimeter, but I just didn't have any of it. So this is what we're using. So I've cut it to where it's just a little bit wider than the hook gate. And then I'm going to just kind of cut the end of it into a taper, just to cut down on the bulk. I'm going to advance my thread closer to the front of the hook, not all the way to the front. Foam can be fun to tie in, so I'm just going to put just a little bit of super glue down just to make sure that it doesn't spin all around on me. Now we're just going to bind that foam right down to the top of that hook shank. So right now I'm using somewhat loose wraps just to get it on there. And then I'll go back over top of it. You want that to butt up. So you want it to butt up right to where your tail is at. So we're just gonna continue to bind that down nice and tight. So for the body, I really like the look of straggle string. You can use chenille. I've used chenille in the past for dubbing, but I was trying to find a material that I liked better. The straggle string micro legs works really well. It doesn't have a lot of bulk though. So I've been trying to come up with something that would give it more bulk, still look good, and enhance the floatability. So out comes Semperfli with the dry fly poly yarn. So you take those two and combine them together. We're going to make a rope out of them. Hey Britt, are your vests for sale? This is Julie. Hi Julie, no, we didn't make vests. We just made them for us, but maybe we ought to. We have hats, that's it. Anyway, so I'm going to make a rope out of these using the Nor-vise rotary feature. So again, rather than cutting a piece off, tying it in, I'm just going to tie it in right off the spool. This dry fly poly yarn is just, it's so versatile. There's so many things you can do with it, and it just looks really good. So I've tied that in. Now I'm going to take it right off the spool. I'm not cutting it from the spool. Tie that down. Just make sure they're both bound down good. Then I'm going to go in and put a half hitch in. Randy, is that the same stuff I used on the first fly? It is. So there's straggle string and straggle legs. The first thing I used was straggle string. These are straggle legs. A little bit different. You go check out the Semperfli catalog. It talks all about the differences. And while you're there, check out all of the other really cool stuff they have going. I know one has UV, one doesn't. One has longer legs that are less dense. Actually, I'm going to back those wraps off. So just they've got some really, if you haven't checked out the Semperfli catalog before, do so. It is so much more than a catalog. There's patterns, there's just, it's just amazing. So there's my plug for that. But it is so much more than a catalog. So again, I think I already did. If not, I'm going to put half hitch in. I'm going to take my thread over to my thread base or thread post. And then, so again, I've still got both of these materials on the spools. I haven't cut them off at all because I don't want to waste any of it. I've just unwound quite a bit of it, so it's easier to work with. I'm going to take both of these materials, just like we did with the peacock curl. And I'm just going to spin those right into that thread. Take my thread off the thread post. And now I've created a body that has the straggle legs like I liked. And you can do these in any color. There's so many color varieties. It's honestly a little overwhelming how many different options you could do with these. So I've now made my body and I've incorporated that dry fly poly yarn. So that's going to help with the floatability of the fly. But honestly, I mean, foam floats, but this craft foam just really isn't that good. It's all right, but it's not that floaty. So get that tied down and go in and just trim that off. Again, they're still on the spool. You can just wind those back up. And I've wasted absolutely zero material of those. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and pull our foam forward. Kind of cup it over and around. Take a few wraps. I like to flatten my thread out for this, so spin it counterclockwise. It just gives it more of a flat area instead of cutting through the foam. Okay. And you want to leave enough room up here. We're going to add probably just a little bit of dubbing to help hold that front gurgler up. So at this point, we're going to add some more of the, I'm just using these chartreuse crazy legs again. So I'm just going to pull, they come on a little pink. I'm just going to pull one of those off. If you double it over, and tie it in. And again, I like to flatten my thread out for this. I think it just bites it a little better. So I tied it in at the top. Take your scissors and just snip that front off. Now you can work those legs to the side of the thigh. Some people like to add a bit of cement here at this point. You certainly can if you want to. I'm just going to take a couple more wraps around them just to tighten them up. I think we'll be just fine without adding any cement there. So next up, we're going to take all of these legs and the foam, and I'm just going to fold that all back and use my hair clip to grab it. I'm going to advance my thread and jump it just right in front of that. I'm just going to put a half hitch in. And then next up, so we're going to just use some dubbing. I've got some Hen's UV ice dub in chartreuse, green, whatever you want to call it. So go ahead and I'm going to just loosen that up a little bit. So it'll grab onto our thread, hopefully nice and easy. So loosen your tension nut. Put that hank of dubbing at the front there. And we're just going to throw some dubbing on there. I think we're going to probably just want just maybe a little bit more. Probably not. We probably overdid it now, but that's okay. Eric. Now I'm going to just try to tighten that up a little bit as best I can. So I'm going to take that hair clip off, pull that around, and now we're going to, I'm going to tighten my tension nut up. Normally I would just take a wrap with my hand, but it's hard because I've got the camera right there. So we're going to take this dubbing and go in between those rubber legs. Tighten that up a little bit more. So we're just going to take it in between those rubber legs to help hold them apart. You can also, if you want, you can put in a little a piece of foam indicator on the top of this. That's a definite thing as well. You just cut a little triangle of foam, usually in a bright color that's easy for you to see. So whichever is easy for you. Okay. So that's good. We're going to pull this all back. And then I'm going to jump it right in front again. And just hit the camera, because why not? And then we're just going to do that. And that little ball of dubbing just helps hold that front up. So go ahead, just put a nice, neat little head on it. Go ahead, do a half hitch, half hitches, or whip finish, whichever you prefer. Put the thread off. Now you can leave it at that, or if you want, you can put some UV on it, or head cement, whichever. So do that just to demonstrate something more or less. So do that, say, oh, look, I just plopped a bunch of head cement or UV right in the eye of my hook. That's no good. So if you just take a tip of a feather, just a scrap, and just run that through the eye, it'll clean that out before you hit it with the UV or before it dries. And then take that hair clip off. You can still kind of position those legs if you need to. We'll trim them in just a second. Now, when you trim this off, you want to leave it a little long. It's a gurgler pattern. You want to leave that a little long. You know, some people like to come in and just clip those corners off. That's just purely aesthetic. Now, for trimming the legs, I like to just grab the back two. Keep in mind, if you pull on them and cut them, they'll shrink back up. So keep that in mind. They'll end up being shorter than you wanted. Randy, when you say panfish, are you talking bluegill and crappie? Randy, that is exactly what I'm talking about. Bluegill and crappie. Sometimes perch. Every now and then you'll get a bass. All right. So with that, that is a just a real simple gurgler pattern. It's fun to fish. It floats really well, especially with the dry fly poly yarn in it. Let me switch my camera out. Yeah, so it floats really well. It's fun to fish. Sometimes a bass will hit it. You can definitely tie it a little bit smaller, so that way it's a little easier for the panfish to get it. But they don't seem to care if it's a little bigger or not. They eat it anyways. It's great for hanging a dropper off of, so you can hang a smallish dropper off it, a copper john, something like that. But it's just a really fun fly to fish. And those are the flies I have for you guys tonight. So again, I think Tim said my blog post about early fishing for panfish, so bluegill and crappie, whatever you call it, will be coming out on Wednesday. So keep an eye out on the Nor-vise page for it. With that, does anybody have any questions? Well, thank you everybody for doing the like or heart icons. We appreciate it, and we sure appreciate everybody for tuning in. Next week Tim will be tying again. I don't know what he's tying, but he'll be tying. And thank you again to all of the participants and sponsors for the Norvise March Madness. It was fun. Hopefully everybody's stress level can go back to normal now that it's over. Congratulations, Terry, and also to Jock. You guys both did a great job in the finals. So it was well deserved to both of you. With that, I will talk to y'all later. Have a good night.